I probably spent about $400K out of my own personal account. I own the building, I own the practice, and I own the equipment. So it's like, let's say we're 60 days before the startup and I just spent all this money and I'm like freaking out. And then it comes in like, oh my God, I really need to make some money. I need to close arches. I need to do 4 or 5 arches off the bat. Otherwise, what am I gonna do?
Okay, so you're all in now. This has to work. There's no choice of this not working, right? Have you ever done that many before in a month up to this point? Were you doing 5 arches before? How many were you doing before you opened up this practice?
I was doing about 8, and then Dr. Dune was doing about 8 to 10 as well. And this is with jumping into a practice and knowing the protocols for it.
Welcome back to another episode of the Full Arch Advantage podcast. I'm your host, Gary Bird. I'm the founder of SMC National, where we help offices just like yours level the playing field against the big guys out there so you can grow the way that you want. And today I have Dr. Daniel from the Colorado Surgical Institute, and he is going to share his journey of how he's averaging 10 arches a month in a startup business under 13 months and how he did everything from end to end. And this is one of my favorite episodes that I've ever done. I don't ever say that. It's actually the first time I've ever said that. He is going to share some stuff that I've never heard before, and he's going to be real with you. He's going to tell you the real story of how he's gotten here. He's not only an owner doctor, but he's launched a practice as well as averaging 10 arches. Really, really good episode. You're going to learn so much from this. And at the end, he's going to do something that honestly, he shouldn't have done, but he did it anyways. And so you're going to want to watch all the way to the end because he's going to offer you something that very few people in the dental industry are willing to do. So stay tuned for this one. Right. We are live and we're going to have another conversation about growth today. And I'm excited because Daniel has a lot of experience in startups, a full arch startup, 13 months. And he's already doing 10 arches a month, which is crazy. Like that's really, really fast growth. And it's not easy, right? You've probably noticed this before, but this podcast is unsponsored. What that means is we don't get paid to do it, but we want to bring you the best information possible. So how do we make sure that this content stays on the air? We need you to like and subscribe. Wherever you're at, whatever you're listening on, just give us a thumbs up or subscribe. And that helps us out so much. I know that you probably haven't done it. So I'm just going to sit here and wait until you do. 95% of our listeners have not subscribed to our podcast. So go ahead and do it now. Don't make this awkward. All right, good. Back to the show. But it is something that is achievable. And so, Daniel, I'm excited to talk to you today, Dr. Daniel, because I want to know what have you been doing that's been impacting your growth to get to that 10 number?
Yeah, of course. So Gary, first of all, thanks, man, for having me on. I appreciate it. I have heard of your podcast a bunch. I heard really good things, so I'm excited to be on it. And
it's awesome. Thanks, man.
But yeah, so first of all, my name is Daniel Briskie. I own a dental practice called Revive Dental. I'm in Colorado, a little bit more on the northern side of Colorado. I also own a surgical institute, so it's called Colorado Surgical Institute. So we teach other dentists how to do implants. But we opened that about 3 years ago. But the real important stuff is the private practice, the flagship, right? That's where everything comes from. Without the flagship, you do not have a surgical institute.
Yeah.
So, right, first you need your baby. So I graduated back in 2016. I tried kind of everything. I tried associateships, partnerships, everything. Everything was okay, but I was missing that legacy portion. So about 2 years ago, I decided, you know what, I really need to have my own final resting place for my dentistry, and I need to have my final retirement spot. So all you are probably thinking, man, this guy is probably like 55. No, I'm 35.
Wow.
I'm a little younger, but sometimes I feel a little
fresh
old.
Meat, guys. Fresh meat.
Yeah, exactly. So I went on this journey and I was like, man, I really love dentistry. Right? I can do molar endo. I can do all on X really well. Wisdom teeth surgery, anything surgery I just really advance at. I can do tissue graftings, zygomas, pterygoids, you name it, I can do it. But it's like, what do I want to do? In developing a practice, I think it's really important to understand the type of practice you want to build. Like, are you trying to go one practice or two practices, right? Is a big question. And make sure you're like always honest with yourself. Because two sound sexy, but one is actually really sexy.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Especially after you do it, right? It's like, man, I thought it was going to be sexy, but yeah, the old life was more sexy.
Yeah. And then you start thinking, well, what do I want the practice to look like? Right. The first couple practices I were at, 2 of them, they had about 6 to 7 ups. And then I entered a partnership with my partner who actually owns the Colorado Surgical Institute with me. His name's Tahir Dune, amazing clinician, amazing dentist, same thing, amazing business owner. But we started to grow the practice, right? And we went from 2 to 5 million. And from that came a lot of issues.
Were you all GP at that point?
Yeah, we're all GP. And then we were just starting to do all the surgery stuff. So this is about 4 years ago. We're like one of the first people to even own an iMetric in the US. And we were just trying to figure out the all-on-X stuff. Like no one was talking about it 4 years ago, right? It wasn't even a thing.
Yeah.
And then we decided, well, it's fun to do the specialty stuff because what other thing can you do that gives the patient their smile back, or they say thank you, right? They don't say thank you for an occlusal filling, but they sure as hell say thank you after they give them a new smile, right?
Yeah.
So throughout that process, you start thinking, you're like, man, what is the avatar? What do I want this practice to look like? And I think it's really important to be honest. So I decided at that moment, I don't want a monster practice. I really don't. I want a 7 to 8 operatory practice. I want to do the cases that I want to do, but I also want to sell the practice later. So that means I think there should be a good hygiene and general practice side as well. So I decided, man, I would really love if I could get my practice to be, 80% implants, right? I think that 70, 80, I think that'd be really cool, but still have hygiene, right? And still be able to get an associate. So that way someday I can take a vacation. Right?
So you're thinking you're way ahead of your time. Okay, so that's really good.
So opening the practice, you're like, man, how in the world am I going to build a practice and do 80% implants, right? What's the secret formula, the secret recipe here to actually achieve that? So I think it's diversifying. So first you need the practice and you need the land, right? Or you need the building and you need to need the correct geographic area. So I think it's important to set up shop, not necessarily in like a downtown area, because it's actually kind of hard to get to in a downtown area, but somewhere where people may have less teeth. And in Colorado, a little bit more on the north side. Some of the farmers here, they bury their money in the cornfields. So, you never want to judge. You never want to judge someone in Colorado.
That's really interesting because a lot of times people are like, "Well, I just want the most high-end patients." But what most people don't realize, when people have a lot of money, they don't typically have a lot of dental problems because they've been taking care of themselves.
Exactly. So it's like, do I want heavy PPO? And going downtown like that, man, you're locking yourself into the rest of your life being a heavy PPO-driven practice for the most part. So decided Northern Colorado, and Colorado is pretty cool because there are a lot of areas. If I had to redo it, I'd probably go south and go more to like Parker, or Aurora, some of these areas that have big populations that just don't have a lot of implant dentists around them. So in my area, about a half hour away, I have a Clear Choice, and there's a Nuvia, right, really pretty close to me. But I was like, man, I think I could be the cutoff between Northern Colorado and Denver. So that's what I made my mind up as. So, like,
so just so everybody understands that, Dr. Daniel, like cutoff means people will come from both sides to him because he's in between their drive into Denver. And so he's positioning his office in a way that he, with his competition in mind. So that's really, really good call out.
Yep. And then I started looking even at like billboards. It's like, all right, so if I could find a billboard, where would I put it? Right? I would probably put it on the exit that's going to or away from Clear Choice. Right? Hey, free second opinion.
Yep. That's huge.
Right? So
hey, how was your dental visit? Free second opinions.
Yes.
That's awesome.
They always say yes. So in the beginning, and you have to start this process really early in terms of the marketing before. Because I opened, I'd say it was almost June 1st of last year. And to do that, you want to go off the bat and you want to start closing cases. So to close cases or to do the cases, you actually have to have the equipment, right? And the equipment's actually very expensive. So what I've found also, Gary, like over the years is a lot of dentists will want to do a startup like this, like right off the bat. But what they don't understand is they don't really have the equity to do that or the cash reserve to save up. So I try to steer people away from it and try to land somewhere where they can do some cases and build like working capital to be able to afford to open a practice. Right.
Yeah.
Because for example, you get an SBA loan, you got to pay 20% of that loan. So
yeah,
you need that out of your pocket.
It's like the difference to the way I would break it down is like, it's the difference between buying a house that you get an FHA loan that you only put 3.5% down. And you're like, oh, I can totally afford that. But then you do an investment property and they're like, I want 30% down. And you're like, oh, that's a lot more money, right? Like that's the difference, right?
Exactly. So even if you're going to buy something, you still have to have the materials there, right? I think you have to have a scanner, an intraoral scanner. Trios obviously is my favorite. And then you have to have a printer if you're going to enter the full arch area. And you have to have photogrammetry. That's really the only consistent way I still believe to this day, after using every type of intraoral scanner flag that you could freaking imagine. I just think photogrammetry is the only way to actually do it 100% correct 100% of the time. So you have three major things in a CT machine, right? So you have intraoral scanner, you have to buy a printer, an iMetric, and you have to buy a CT machine. So you always have to make sure you factor those pieces of equipment into.
And what was the total on that? Ballpark total on that range?
I'd say 140 about.
Okay.
Right. And then maximum really that you're going to get from a loan for a startup is probably 750, I'd say. Max, if you can get an extra 50K of like working capital from them.
Yeah.
So you always have to think, well, man, they got a big practice. You want to build five operatories. So you're going to have to come up with a lot of money. I probably spend about 400K out of my own personal account.
Okay. So you're all in now. So like you have to make this work now because you just spent your money that you've been saving up. And you have a huge loan now. And so day one.
So I have a real estate too. So I bought the real estate at the same time I did the startup. So now I own the building, I own the practice, and I own the equipment.
So you're all in. This has to work. There's no choice of this not working, right? Okay, so you're all in now. And then, so what did you're doing 0 arches at this point now, or?
Yeah, so it's like, let's say we're 60 days before the startup, right? And I just spent all this money and I'm like freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? I really hope I made a good decision here, right? And then it comes in like, oh my God, I really need to make some money. I need to close arches. I need to do 4 or 5 arches off the bat. Otherwise, what am I gonna do?
Have you ever done that many before in a month up to this point? Were you doing 5 arches before?
Yep.
How many were you doing before you opened up this practice?
I was doing about 8, and then Dr. Dune was doing about 8 to 10 as well. So
okay, so your practice was doing 15 to 20 arches a month. So you knew it wasn't like you were jumping into the deep end and never swam before.
Right. Yeah. And this is with, jumping into a practice and knowing the protocols for it, right? Like I know how to close the case, or I know the paperwork, or I know the financing, I know and I understand some of the marketing, right? Because at that point it's really geographic too, because you never know what's going to work in like which area. So you have to go through this whole really song and dance and figure out what's going to work in that particular area, right? But there's a lot of commonalities. Yeah. So I ended up starting some TV commercials, and I started that 60 days before I opened to just start pulling in leads, right? Then you start getting some phone calls, and your goal there is to smooth the patient over enough to where they know that you're going to be opening, and then they know that you're the authority, right? So I tell them, hey, I teach this. This is my thing. I would really highly advise you to wait for me because I can save you some money, and we can do it right the first time. And then start talking to the patient about, this is a private practice setting, and I'm going to be here because this is my practice. I'm not going to disappear. Corporate places, I always will. I will always try my hardest to persuade them to come to me, right? And some of those points of sales can be even hygiene related. You can tell them, hey, they're going to do your teeth, but are they going to take care of them for you?
Yeah.
Right.
And part of it is it's just the owner doctor. I mean, that would be my deal breaker for me, is that you're dealing with the owner, and I own the land, and I own the building, and I'm taking responsibility. I'm not going anywhere. I'm 35 years old. You need me to be around for the next 20 years just in case.
Yep. Yeah. Lucky for you, I'm not retiring soon.
Right? Yeah. Exactly.
So I was able to schedule actually quite a few people for the first couple of weeks. My first
was that through marketing or just your relationships or internally, like kind of
all from marketing, all from my own marketing efforts. I was able to pull
that's awesome.
Some implant consults on the first 2 weeks, and I actually closed. It was 5 or 6 arches the first month.
That's really good for the first month. That's huge.
Yeah, I was super happy. I was like, oh my God, this is going to work. But obviously, it could work for a little bit, but that was some leads that I got over 60 days, right? And I'm just trying my hardest to close those leads when I'm opening. But that's not going to stay forever, right? that initial like small influx, because the market is going to hit you in the face and you're like, oh man, what do I do? Because nothing is consistent and I don't have the organic search is not there, right? My SEO is not built. I'm not optimized.
There's no Google reviews. There's no Google reviews. Yeah, you're just
right?
open. Yeah, you're not even probably indexed in Google barely. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Yeah, they can barely look at a map and find you on the find you on the point, right? Like, because in the beginning, when you do your whole Google verification, the dot where your practice is not always where the practice is. It's sometimes like 100 yards away or 200 yards away, and the patient's like, "Hey, how do I actually find you?" Right? Where's your practice at? So, starting to open up the practice, got some good archers in there, and at that point in time, I felt like I could close them. I can really kind of talk with anyone these days. I've been doing the cases enough where I can convince the patient to do it, right? And I think one of the secret sauces is just definitely being personable or getting used to being uncomfortable, talking about really large value treatment plans, right? And like knowing your worth, because you got to sell this case and you want them to say yes. So having a good A to Z workflow helps a lot. But in the beginning, remember, like I was answering the phone calls myself. So an implant lead would come in, I'm answering it because I wouldn't trust at that point that my staff is educated enough to answer it, right?
Yeah.
That's terrifying. So I would answer phone calls all the time, even on the weekends, no matter what, I'm answering the phone call.
That's so awesome. That's so awesome. No, I
I'm
love
managing
that.
Those leads.
It's kind of like getting it done until you can get, whatever it takes to get it done up front. That's awesome.
Yes. Yep. 100%. So you start going down the months, right? And you start off with a marketing company. I started off with a marketing company that is really well known on Dental Success Network. So I'm faculty on Dental Success Network and Dental Success Institute.
It's a great group
for implants and digital. So on there, I engaged the company where he's doing my marketing, but he's doing everything, right? He's doing my general, my emergency, and my implants.
Oh wow!
Right. And at this point, man, I was such a virgin. I feel like I came a long way this last year. I didn't really understand what all this meant, because
it's totally different.
He's telling me I'm doing all the marketing. Oh, cool.
Yeah. And it's different, just so for the audience out there, the difference between doing full arch marketing and doing GP marketing or pedo marketing or ortho marketing is the difference between doing a single implant and full arch. That's how much different it is in the marketing world.
Yes,
even though it's all dental, but it's totally different.
100%. For everyone listening, I also pictured too what your practice is going to look like. It's really hard to market for general dentistry and to be an authority enough on your website to make it look like you also do implants really well.
Or not scare off, right? So it's like, the way to think about this is that you wouldn't go online and if someone was like, "Hey, invest money with me, for retirement, and in our lobby we have a Chuck E. Cheese," you would go, "When the world? Why do you have a Chuck E. Cheese in your life?" Like, it wouldn't give you confidence to put your money there, and it also wouldn't make you feel comfortable to bring your kids there either. Like, why do we have bankers around my kids? So, what you have to remember is like each of these has a separate avatar. So the mom who's bringing her kid into the pedo office is looking for different things than the mom who's going to the GP office, who's looking for value and convenience, who's different than the lady or the guy that needs a full arch who wants an expert to do it. And they know it's going to cost as much as a car. So you can actually, by doing one, you can scare away the other. So there's a lot of thought that has to go into it.
Yes. Really, really, really well said, actually. I think that gets underplayed quite significantly.
100%. Yeah.
It's really hard to pull that off, right? And you have to be an artist with your website and really sit down and think about this, because the patient's going to remember that first click on your website. And if it looks like just a family practice, they're going to click right off and they're going to not do their implants with you. Right? But vice versa, they jump on the website. They're like, "Oh man, this guy only does implants. He doesn't do families." Then you're like, no, I really do.
Yes, we do.
We do. Yeah, we're really good at the easy stuff also, right?
Yeah.
Is what I tell patients. You start going down the weeds. I'm like, man, okay, so I'm getting some leads, but I would argue those leads were brought in from me, from my marketing and diversifying my marketing, rather than the organic and SEO, right? Because you need the searchability and you need the scale, economies of scale for the marketing, to even be found, right? And be searched and found, and some basic ad campaigns going. But what are these patients searching, or how are they finding you in different avenues? Because right off the bat, they're not going to find you right away, right? You just search implants, you're not going to come up right away up the top. It just doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So you have to diversify your marketing. And that marketing could look like so many different things. Yeah. You could do direct mail, right? Direct mail actually does work. I think it works well especially for close radiuses.
Of course, yeah.
But maybe not
direct mail works great, but you have to keep in mind it is influenced by how many other people are doing it at the same time as you. So that's what always, I work with so many doctors that were like, I was using direct mail, it was killing, I was getting like 50 new patients, and then it just stopped. And I'm like, well, yeah, because we all know what dentists do once they see you sending postcards. They all send them as well. And then now you have before you were getting 100% of the market share, and now you're only getting 5% of the market share because there's 10 other dentists doing it. That is such a nuance. So people are like, well, how do I know what they're doing? I'm like, it's a guess. Like, you have to guess and hope. So there's like an ebb and flow of postcards. I love that. I totally agree with you.
And it's extremely hard to track, actually. I've even tried tracking, and it's actually very hard track this type of campaign. People are like, just put a tracker in it. I mean, it's not that easy also, because I think it's hard to do that.
Because they're not, most people don't call from a postcard. They go look at your Google reviews first. So then you think it's a Google lead, and then you're like, wait, that's an SEO lead. And it's like, no, it was from a postcard. Yeah.
Yep. With a grain of salt, right?
Yeah. So, well, actually what I've found that's really successful with this is so we have like a tracker, and we use AI to like track what's said on the call. And then we can also look in the PMS, but again, take that with a grain of salt. But if you actually ask, I would love to know if you've ever tried this before. Train your front desk to ask, who can we thank for referring you? Not, where did you find us? So when you ask, where did you find us? Everybody says Google. And it's like, well, okay, because that's the last place everybody looks. Yeah. So we train everybody, who can we thank for referring you? And then they always go, oh, I wasn't referred, I got your postcard. Or, oh, I wasn't referred, I Google searched you. Or, oh, I wasn't referred, I saw your billboard. And it's a really, and you sometimes you have to ask twice, like, who can we thank for referring you? Oh, I did a Google search. Well, what did you Google search? Or did you hear about us before the Google search? You can get that double verification if you really want. But yeah, that's a very true statement. It is very difficult to track.
I like that, because I like what you said right there is actually really important, because I didn't start doing the tracking of those leads, I'd say really till like month 8. You're kind of sitting there at the seat of your pants. You're like, oh my God, I hope I don't like go bankrupt. Yeah. So you don't really think about all these things. But I started to, in an open dental software, that's the one I use for my practice management. You write in like where they're referred from, right? And you can open up different campaigns to select from, like, where does this person, how did this person find you? So what I do once a month is I go through every single new patient, and we start asking each other, where did they come from? Exactly. And if I don't have that answer, I need that answer. So I'm going to ask them the next time they come in, right? Because did they come from the mailer? Did they see the TV commercial? Did they come from a Facebook ad? Did they come from a Google ad? Like, where, or did they come from a friend, right? I need to know that. Like, it's really important. Otherwise, you're just shooting in the dark with all these marketing campaigns.
And then you can never turn any of them off too. That's the part that drives people nuts. Is like, it's not just about knowing where things are coming from so you can do more of it. It's about being able to say, well, let's stop doing that and invest those dollars somewhere else, because it gets stressful. If you're doing 10 arches a month and you're spending, I'm just going to throw out a random number, you're spending $20,000 a month, like, you want to know what's working and what's not so you can stop doing some of it. But if you don't know, you're just like, I got to keep doing all of it. And then what if I said, well, let's get you to 15 arches? Are you going to ramp up every marketing source? No, I hope not. Right. But you got to have a level of tracking to be able to do that.
Yes. Agreed. So you have to open up, get some fancy documents going with like an Excel sheet, right? And then you start tracking it. I'm just starting to use a software like a Blue IQ software to track some management leads, which I think is really important.
Is that like a CRM, basically?
Yeah. Yep. A CRM. Yeah. So not really a true practice management software, but a CRM to start tracking where different campaigns or patients or dollar values because you can mesh, in Blue IQ, you can take your QuickBooks and your open dental software, your practice management stuff, and you can log all like everything together with your marketing campaigns and see which ROI is coming from what and how many dollars. But to do that, you have to track those leads, right? And that's where it all comes from. So you have to know what patient came from what lead. And you have to start asking really good questions like Gary trains his staff to do, right? Otherwise, you're just saying Google, Google, Google.
Yeah. And then it's like every patient came from Google. That's what ends up happening. Yeah.